Have you ever had someone you used to record a lot at home, right? Or even in a home studio at someone's studio? Has anyone ever, like, you sent a track you were liking, and in the end you said, my brother, what did they do to my track?
Yes, definitely.
What do you think happened in that process, the sound having.
Well, usually, there's that thing of cutting the bass and boosting the treble. Then sometimes it's in the guy who's mixing interfered there. Oh, I wanted the guitar to be sharper. Or in the final mastering itself, where everything became sharper and the guitar came along. So,
But was there one that bothered you?
oh, several.
Is there one you can mention?
No, I don't have one. Hey, you said you were going to open the black box. Where's the black box? Yeah, just threats, just in the air. So there have been times I've been upset. There have been, yes, many times. But today, with time, I'm going to turn 40. As the years go by, you start letting go. You say, look, I did my best from here on. It's in God's hands. Give a little money to the mix guy. Say, look, leave an offer with you just in advance.
I've seen so many things happen in mixing and mastering. I think the most absurd thing I heard was a friend of mine who recorded 2 keyboard solos for the guy to choose the best one. The guy put both solos on top of each other, man.
I would never have this wonderful idea that this guy had.
This guy is a genius. Can you imagine when the guy got home and listened? No. No, my friend. It's already in the mix. It's already gone to the CD to be released.
Or when the guy edits and makes a mess, mixes both, a piece of each one, and it becomes a mess. Terrible, I say. No, man, there was a story, a beginning, middle, and end this solo. You couldn't do that. Takes the end of one with the end of the other, and wow.
But was there any key change for you? Any point where you say, wow, man, that was something I really noticed. It helped me with the issue of tone.
So the issue of tone, I think it's very much about the sound you hear, right? For the sound you're going to seek from the reference you have based on your life, listening to things, right? From your musical references. Man, I listen to a lot of blues. I listen to a lot of pop, so I create mental references there that I go after.
A repertoire of ideas, right? Sound ideas.
Sound ideas, and I'm always going to seek that sound. It can be any pedal board. I think that this can be a quality. When I'm looking for a sound, I want that Fender sound. And I grab that old little pedal board, and there's an amp with the name Fender on it. I open it up and say, this is not Fender here or anywhere else. And what do? I don't use it just because it has the name Fender, even though I want it to be a Fender amp. So I will look through all the available amps for the one that will achieve that sound I have as a Fender reference. The type of Fender that I want, and sometimes there's a name there that has nothing to do with it. The guy said, hey, you used an amp. These Chinese pedal boards have some names, right? Quite random. Some of them put the reference, this one Marshall, next to it, but others don't even have it. So you keep testing and say, oh, this is similar. How do we combine this with I, R, A, B, or C? So it takes some effort to find that sound that's in your mind, much more than just the name. I've received messages like, hey, I wanted some Fender presets, I'm wanting for this and that. I said, man, but that pedal board is different. So if you want that Fender, sometimes you get that thin Fender with nothing, very trebly and all. So I look for that sound. I'm seeking in another amp.
Especially because when you talk about Fender, how many Fender models are there, right?
Exactly, right. With larger speakers, smaller speakers.
The front man has a different sound from the hot rod.
Very different from the twin.
From the twin, yeah. But which Fender reference do you like?
I like the twin and the hot rod too.
Do you have any amp at home?
I have a Vox there, a C3.
Do you also like that British sound of the Vox?
I like it too, And on the road, we have the opportunity to explore and test a lot of things, right? What I found most often was the jazz chorus. Unfortunately. I don't even remember who I saw talking about it this week. I think it was Doka. I had a chat with Doka. Doka is a well-known roadie in gospel music. And he said that at the height of gospel music success, the jazz chorus was what everyone was using, coming from abroad. The jazz chorus, right?
But do you know why the jazz chorus became famous? I don't know. Chris Bono told me this. He's a reference in pedals. He tests. All of them for line 6. He said it's because it was the first amplifier to have a built-in chorus. So people were like, man, there's a chorus in this thing. It wasn't because of the sound. It was because there was something new there. So it was hype for a while, you know?
I have a version, flash, of why it became famous here in Brazil, which I think is one of the amps that can take the most beating. You see on the road a bunch of amps patched up, adjusted, and the amp is still working. Jazz chorus.
Jazz chorus.
It's also because it's solid state, right? I think it has this ability to withstand a beating in companies, being transported here and there. Sometimes you arrive and everything is swapped out, all the buttons replaced. And then on the road, you have to learn to manage on the road. The studio is a great school for sound tuning. The road is another school. You arrive, there's a jazz chorus there that the speaker has already been replaced, the system already, wow, this cut sound here has to work miracles. Then you arrive the next day, there's a tiny amp that has no sound, you turn it up a bit, it distorts. So you have to push it to its limit and compensate with the monitor, and the monitor is very mid-range. So you become a juggler there to get sound out of what you have, right? The gospel market doesn't have a structure where you can bring all the amps and such, right? Especially now with the modernity of everyone bringing campers, forget it. There wasn't any before, and now there's definitely not going to be that possibility.
There's also that thing, you're hired by a singer. There are several other problems happening, right? Then you get there and start complaining about the amplifier.
Yes, for sure.
It's tough for you.
My desire to buy a camper was when I saw the big guys who could bring amps starting to bring the camper, I thought, there's something here.
Was there a guy who...
Kiko from Rupanova made an apartment, rented a little apartment in my head and said, man, the day you try it. And he was a guy who had... Kiko is incredibly generous. Like whenever we met him, he'd say, let me explain, it's this, it's that. He said, and he was a guy who had the means to bring amps, heads, equipment, trucks, and so on. And he said, man, I switched to Kemper. I have the same sound every time, and I don't want any other life. But I said, man, what about the amp? Man, it's an amp. You have the bass, mid, treble, gain. It's all in your hands. It's an amp. I said, really, man? Then I tested it in the studio for the first time, and I said, wow, interesting. Because when you go to record, you want a different amp. You want more possibilities. You want different drives. I used to record in the studio doing many tracks. So I did journalism tracks with a lot of rock, heavier rock, blues, progressive rock. So you need different sounds. And with just one amp and one setup, you're kind of limited there. With the Kemper, you can play around with amps, play around with pedals, play around with everything. When I tested it, I said, oh, cool.